I am so excited to introduce our next guest on the podcast, a dear friend, psychic, astrologer, tarot and oracle reader, author, and all-time amazing human, Maria Marmanides. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Steph. Thank you for having me.
We are here to talk about your first ever oracle deck, the
hmm
Women of Myth Oracle deck. So let's just dive in. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, the work that you do, and what
hmm
led you to this deck.
Okay. Well, first, just thank you for having me on again. This is like really exciting for me. Like, without sounding like too cheesy, this is definitely, it's always been like a lifelong dream to create either a tarot deck or an oracle deck or just share my love for this kind of discipline out into the world. And I just like really want to thank you for like giving me the opportunity to talk about it. I am Maria. My full name is Maria Sofia Marmanides. I run an astrology and tarot social media page. I also write horoscopes for Women in Home, which is a UK magazine. I do some readings. Sometimes I like will go dark a little bit on readings, but I enjoy like all kind of different forms of astrology. I like mundane astrology, which is like the study of like current events. I like horary astrology, which is the astrology of answering kind of pertinent, burning questions, kind of like tarot and oracle cards. I like natal astrology. Also by trade and like by like my career, like outside of this realm, is a writer. So I've been a writer and a reader my whole life. What's been really like gratifying just about my experience with the kind of astrology world and the metaphysical world and the spiritual community has just been able to like marry these two things that I really love, which is like reading and research and then writing, or I guess that's three things. And then also just like this like real like love of the stars and the planets and like, just being able to discuss. It's like when I even think about the kind of books that I gravitate to, like fiction wise or even nonfiction wise, it's like always like, why are we here? What were we born for? What's that intersection between fate and free will? And like being able to understand your birth chart and astrology for me is just like super gratifying because I think sometimes it can feel like, you know, like we're just born on this planet and then like, we're kind of set adrift without like a rule book. It's like we kind of just have to figure it out. And I think astrology can be not a rule book, but it can be like a guidebook. Sorry, that was like kind of like a very sort of like long-winded answer to get to who am I and what do I do? But that's what I do. I really like, whether it's transits and like Mars is entering Scorpio or there's an eclipse, it's like, there as above, so below. We all know that. So it's like, how does that affect our kind of daily life and what are the tools that I've been given and how can I kind of circumnavigate kind of difficult times or or like kind of like forecast ahead of like what's coming. So yeah, I think like also like astrology for me has been like a little bit of a tool for like managing my own anxiety. I don't look at astrology, and I'm curious what you think. I don't look at astrology as a religion, but I definitely look at it as like a daily meditative like spiritual communion, I guess. I'm curious how
Yes.
you feel.
I don't think astrology is a religion either at all. And I think that's such a common misconception. People are like, don't you believe in astrology? It's like, you don't believe in it. It's just literally pattern recognition. Like, it's very
Yeah.
scientific to me.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, you're witnessing the correlations between, okay, when the moon does this with Mars, this kind of shit keeps happening in my life. So that's just
Right.
very, you
And
know,
for me, it's like, when I think about religion, and this could be just be my own, kind of Christian upbringing that I had, and I went to Catholic schools when I was growing up. It's like, I think that sometimes my associations with religion is that there's this like punishing factor. So I think some
Mhm.
of the work that I do, and that's, I think, why I gravitate to you as well, because I see it in your work as well, where you try to add, I think oftentimes you add heart as well as humor. And it's like, the planets aren't punishing you. It's like
Mhm.
that's not your birth chart isn't a punishment. Like that's not what this is. And I think that's where I really like love astrology and tarot and oracle for those very reasons. In that it's like this isn't about like I've been bad or the Saturn's coming to like give me like karma or something like that. It's like no, it's like by working with Saturn or working with Mars or any of like my more difficult placements or difficult transits, it's really just about like how can you see what's coming ahead so that way you can like have the tools to best navigate it versus like And I think that's sometimes where like I bristle a little bit when I see people like talking about it as if it's like fatalistic when it's not.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's been the single-handed like best tool for managing my stress as well,
Hmm.
because you're able to understand how long is this period going to last. You can
Right.
anticipate the end. And yeah, it's just been so healing and profound to work with. I think that your personal astrology is so reflective of everything you just said. So, can you share your sun, moon, and rising with our listeners?
Sure. So I'm a Leo sun, I am a Cancer moon, and I am a Virgo rising. I'm curious why you think that. Like, I see, because I was literally just talking about this yesterday. I was like, I feel like my Cancer moon is so loud.
Mm.
Because a friend of mine just they texted me and they had met somebody that was a Leo sun and a Virgo rising. And the not a Cancer moon though, and they were like, they were nothing like you. They were just like their Leo was much more prominent, I guess. I'll,
Hmm.
I'll I'll say that nicely. So it's like I was thinking about it. I was like, oh, maybe everyone's moon sign is the loudest. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just
Mm.
curious what you think.
Well, you were just talking about how much you love research. That's so Virgo rising. Also important to name that your
Hmm.
Mercury is in Virgo on your
Right?
ascendant. Maria is a dignified queen. So you literally have your moon in Cancer at home, you have your
Hmm.
sun in domicile in Leo, and
Hmm.
your Mercury is exalted in Virgo. So
Yep.
yeah, and your
Don't forget
sun,
about my Saturn and Libra.
we can't forget about your Saturn in
Oh,
Libra and your
and
Mars in
Mars and
Scorpio.
Scorpio. Yeah,
Yes.
Mars would be
So
very upset if I forgot. But yes, you're
yes.
right.
And you have your sun in the 12th house. And I have been so blessed to have a reading by Maria. And Maria is such a mystical psychic bitch. There has not, it's true. There has not been a single time that I've texted you without you being like, I felt you already. Or like you
I
just know.
know. I know. I know.
And the way that you, whether it's a reading, your horoscopes, your posts on Instagram, there's just a poetry and a humanness. And you're just such a beautiful translator for the sky. And I am just so grateful to know you. Maria was literally my first astrology friend. And I consider you one of my greatest teachers because I would not have found any of my astrology teachers if it were not for you. And you were, I think, one of my first practice readings.
Yes, I know you've said this before that you like consider me a teacher. To you, I don't. I consider us friends and colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but because I think friends can teach each other things all the time. So I don't know that I've ever sat down and instructed you, but I appreciate that. Like the Cancer moon in me feels very heartwarming about that. The Leo sun in me is like, yes. And then the Virgo rising in me is like, oh no, stop talking about me. But yeah, well, thank you for saying that. And I think, I think what when I think about like where my mysticism lies or where my energy or spiritual kind of gift lies, I really think it comes down to like just looking at my chart and like those water placements. I think
Mm-hmm.
my vibes are strong, like, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that's sometimes difficult, and it has been difficult for me to almost admit that or say that because it feels like I don't know, like either boasting and that's maybe the Virgo rising coming out, or maybe like I'm creating the sense of like, oh, it'll be, I don't know, like I'm gonna jinx myself or something like that. But as I've gotten older, I'm like now in my 40s, it's just like, you know what, no, but this is my gift, this is what I'm good at. Like I don't think I'm as strong in terms of like fire energy and like manifestation. Like I think you and your fire placements are much better at like, and I like even like your tapping practice as well as just like, I don't know, I feel like you're just like a manifestation like witch. And I
Oh.
don't think that's my strength. I mean, because otherwise I would have like manifested, I don't know, so many boyfriends that I probably shouldn't have manifested. But you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like what I have to trust and what I have to rely on. And I think that's why I was saying too, I think sometimes my Cancer moon is strong. Maybe it's I have a Jupiter in Scorpio and I have a Mars in Scorpio that are conjunct in the third, which is like the house of witches and,
Mm-hmm.
divination and all of that. So for me, it's just relying on my vibes. It's like usually, and it's hard to say because it's like it sounds like I think I'm always right, and like of course I've been wrong plenty of times, but it's like I just think I have to what I think my strength lies in is trusting my vibes, trusting my intuition, and like being able to sort of predict events versus being able to feel like I'm controlling the manifestation of them. I don't think that's where my gift is, whereas I do think
Mm.
that's where yours is.
Oh, thank you for that. That's very
Hmm.
sweet. When it comes to your relationship with your intuition and your spirituality and your magic, what is your personal relationship with tarot and oracle, and how do those two intersect?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that like we almost like we're starting to like scratch at that and like just what I was saying previously. But yeah, I grew up Greek. So I'm a first generation Greek American. My parents came here. They were both immigrants, and my siblings, and my brother, my sister, and I were all born here. So first generation Greek Americans. And I know that this is not specific to Greek culture, but it's definitely in the Mediterranean culture. I know in the Jewish culture, they have this Turkish culture. My friend's Armenian, they have similar kind of practices. But growing up Greek, I would say it's like this like mix between kind of very traditional, kind of conservative Christian, Greek Orthodox, ways of being and ways of believing, and like roles of women and men, and kind of really kind of like very like heteronormative, very gender constricting kind of ideas of like how things should be and what you should do. And I could kind of go on a tangent about that. And then married with that is like kind of Greek culture, absent of kind of religious influence, which is like really superstitious. So it's like I have like I always wear something that's like like the evil eye protection. That's in Greeks we call it the mati. It's like I have tons of bracelets, and it's always about like warding off evil. Part of our practice is like if you see a baby, you don't spit on it literally, but like you mime spitting on it. Or like if someone tells you good news, you would say like thoof thoof thoo, which is like this, like you'd make a spitting kind of motion. And it just means you're almost like spitting on the baby or spitting on someone's story, which is like dirtying it. So it's like that way, like the devil or the demons won't notice it and like bring envy upon you. So it's like, yeah. So like I remember that this might be a tangent, but when I got my first book deal, I didn't tell anybody about it, like for a while. Like you were one of the first people I told, but it's like I was so hesitant to like make this big announcement on social media and to like talk about it. It was like, and then I remember my therapist was just like, what's going on with that? Like, are you, and like, yes, there's some Virgo rising, like not really, it's like this little Leo 12th house sun wants to be seen, but also doesn't. So it's like, I think, there's this complicated part of my personal, kind of makeup. But then there's also this cultural, influence of like, don't talk about good things, because if you do, you're bringing like envy upon you, or you're bringing bad luck upon you. Like when Travis Kelce was like, oh, in love with Taylor, he's announcing his Taylor Swift thing, and then he hurt his ankle. In my like family Greek group chat, it was just like, see, this is why you don't boast, because your ankle will get hurt because something nice happened to you. So
Mm.
yeah, that's a long story to say, like there was always, I think, depending, and my family was always more open with it, which I'm appreciative of. But like as a big reader, my mom always took us to the library, always took us to Barnes and Noble, because that's just what I love doing, and that's what if she was going to buy me something, that's what I would ask for. And then just wandering around Barnes and Noble or the library or whatever, it's kind of, I went into like those esoteric or like the mystical section, and yeah, that's where I fell in love. My first love was tarot, and then I was like more of a sun signer astrology person for a long time before 2017, and that's when I really started like deep diving into like, shouldn't call it real astrology, but deeper astrology than just sun signs.
What about, when did you get your first deck, and how has your relationship with tarot and oracle evolved?
Yeah, so I would have been a teenager. So, like I said, I'm 41 now. I'm not a math person. So I want to say like 15, 16. So that's like a
Okay.
couple decades,
Yeah.
like, which makes me feel old. I probably also sound old, but I would say, like, I'm not embarrassed to admit this. I think it's true, or at least it's true for a lot of people, maybe, or maybe not. I don't know. I did it because it's like, you have a crush on someone and you want to know if they like you back. And like, you don't have the courage to ask them. So it's like, well, I'm going to ask my cards, or like I'm going to try to
Hmm.
figure it out that way. So that's really where it started. Like, you're 15, you're like, watching rom-coms, or like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and you want your angel, or
Yes.
whatever. And so it's like, yeah, I think that's where it started, of like just this idea of, even I just said Buffy, like, yeah, just even the TV shows I was like gravitated towards always had like a mystical or supernatural or even sometimes horror component to them. My relationship with the deck, I feel like now it's more like, again, more just intuitive. Like, I don't really do spreads
Hmm.
anymore. That's why I think I'm like, evangelizing the one card tarot journal, or the one card method. I think the one card method is good for both beginners and if you are a little bit more advanced. But like, I've never, like, I think I started off the way most of us do. Like, you're doing the Celtic cross, you're doing the 3 card spread, past, present, future. And then like giving readings to like your teenage girlfriends, you know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like, and I think it's just things like, just kind of starting out that way. I just find that my experience now much more personal. And like, you know, I just know when to stop, I guess. Like,
Mm.
when I've gotten my answer, it's like, versus like, I think sometimes, like, I don't know, like, everyone's practice is their own, but like, I'm not the kind of person that like brings multiple cards to the to like a reading, because I just think that, just for me, it muddies the answer. It's more about trusting, bonding with your deck, like, there's plenty of times I pick up a deck and I think I'm going to love it, and then I don't, or like it just doesn't work for me, and it's like, it's just not a connection. But when I find a deck that I like, yeah, I can usually get it to like one. Sometimes another thing I like is two, 1 or 2 cards. But yeah.
Hmm. I do the same thing. I do a daily tarot pull, and for about a year and a half, I was just doing one card, and now I do two because it just adds another layer of like,
Yeah.
okay, this is how that energy is going to manifest. But it's
Yeah, like the
straight to
one
the
card.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that because it's like the one card is almost like the affirmation that it's like, yep, that's what the situation is about. And then the second card is often, for me, and I think that's what I'm hearing from you too. It's like the second card is like, okay, like, now what should I do about it, or what's coming, or like, what do I need to be prepared for? So yeah, maybe I'll talk about the 2 card method instead of the one
Yeah.
card. But yeah,
Yeah.
um,
It's a great practice for beginners, like anyone who is eager to get into tarot. Because tarot is all about storytelling as well. So
yeah.
I think that comes alive in your chart with your Mercury in Virgo on the ascendant.
I think there's like the research aspect. I mean, I think that's the difference between tarot and oracle too, is that I think it's fair to say that like oracle might lend itself to more creative freedom, particularly as the deck creator. Whereas like tarot, I do think if you're going to practice tarot, there's a little bit of like research that, not, and I don't mean research like you don't need to go to the library, but you have to get to know what the cards mean,
Mhm.
just so even if like the hangman doesn't mean, when as you're building your relationship with your deck, and the hangman for you means something a little bit different, like or the 5 of cups maybe for you isn't about heartbreak,
Mhm.
that's possible, but you can't know that until you know what the traditional meaning is. So
Mhm.
I think that's the biggest difference. I mean, that's a very obvious statement, but that's the biggest thing, I think. Whereas like oracle cards are just a little bit outcome oriented, or like advice oriented, or maybe a little bit even more predictive, whereas like
Mhm.
tarot is more about like the, like, almost like the psychology behind the situation.
Mhm. Mhm. And I think what you said about like boundaries and knowing when to stop is such an important topic to name when ever talking about tarot or oracle, because I cannot
Mhm.
tell you. I mean, I'm a Pluto person, obsessive, so I can't tell you how many times I've done the same spread in one day about the same question, like
Yeah.
probably close to 20,
Yeah.
and the amount of times that the same cards come up,
Yeah.
you
I
know,
know. Because
that's
your
the
deck is just
best.
letting you know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the best thing about tarot. It's absolutely spooky in the best of ways, but really having your boundaries and learning to listen to your intuition. It also hones your intuition in that way.
Yeah. And it's like, it's like trust, which I know is it's hard. Or especially if it's like, it's not immediately the outcome or answer that you wanted and
Mhm.
secretly hoped for, but I think sometimes it's like super clarifying too, because it's like now you know what you wanted, you know, and it's
Mhm.
like it's almost like when that coin flip is coming and you're just like, do I want heads or tails? And it's like, and in that moment, it's like, yeah, no, it's like as the coin is coming down, or like right before you flip the card, it's like it could be a really clarifying moment, you know? So I think it's like all of those things are, you know, worth paying attention to. And it is about trust too at the end of the day. So it's like, okay, you know, I don't know if I'm asking about a relationship or asking about a job I'm looking for or whatever it is, a health situation, and the card I pull, you know, isn't exactly what I wanted to see, or even if it's confusing, like I'm like, how is this answering the question? Versus like, you know, it's almost like kind of batting back that instinct to just like keep pulling cards until like it makes sense, and it's just like no, like just sit with this and like let it manifest in like real time, like let's see how it comes to life, and then you'll see like I don't know, you'll get the 5 of wands and it's like how does that answer the question of like is this going to be a relationship, you know, or does this person care about me or whatever, and it's like that seems confusing at first, but maybe as you kind of go through your week, your day, or as you navigate this relationship or this job or whatever it is, you'll see how the
Mhm.
5 of wands wants to make itself known to you, and then that's how you build your relationship with the cards. So
Mm,
yeah.
mm. Do you have any magical tips for our listeners, whether it's tarot related or any other
um
spiritual adjacent tips?
so I think we were talking about that earlier in terms of, you know, knowing what your strengths are. So I would say I have tried leaning into like what I know and what my life experience has shown me, like in terms of like not like touching an iron and being like, okay, no, that's not good. But I personally think that when I have tried to do spell work or manifestation work, the results haven't always been, not that they haven't been successful because it's like they've worked, but it's like what I think is it's almost like be careful what you wish for, because maybe my guides are protecting me from like I think I want this outcome or I think I
Mm,
want this thing, and when I get it or it's like I get the best that, you know, I possibly can of that situation, it doesn't work out. So I think I just need to be like maybe more aligned. Like I think there's like so much psychology to like, and that, for example, I can be more specific, but like let's say you're trying to like manifest a specific person or a relationship, and then you sort of do, but it's like the relationship still is not like emotionally fulfilling. It's like it's because me and this person I shouldn't be wanting to manifest this person. Do you know what I mean? And
mm,
it's like
mhm.
just being able to like, I don't know, accept that. So I pulled back on that kind of stuff, but it's like where I, like I said earlier, it's like without sounding like I'm boasting and like I can predict everything that ever is going to happen, but where I am right, I think is often my hunches, my vibes, my intuitions on like situations, or you know, romantically I'm a mess, but like in terms of like friendships, where to invest my time, where to invest, like if I'm going to get a job or if I'm going to get a, you know, does my boss like me, like those kinds of things, I feel like I can just intuitively know, you know, and it's
Mm,
been it that is what I would say in terms of like I don't know if that's necessarily a magical tip, but it's like go where there's ease, I think,
mhm.
in terms of like your abilities, and it's like not everybody is good at manifestation, not everybody should be either. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? Like I should stay away from my own romantic manifestations because you know it's only brought me trouble. You know what I mean? So it's just like, but it's like I think it's just getting to know yourself, but I think it's being willing to experiment with it too, because I
Mm.
wouldn't have known that unless I tried. You know, so now that I feel like I know what I'm good at, it's like it's just sticking with that.
I love that. And I think what you said about being so specific in your manifestations is just another magical tip in itself. That was something that I think both of us have heavy Virgo placements. And I think it's so Virgo to get really specific, especially when manifesting like what you want, what you desire. But the universe often wants to give us something better than we can imagine. And
Hmm.
we also have free will and we're meant to be surprised. And so I think when you do get so laser focused, I found for myself, you know, within like maybe like a year or two ago, that was my biggest blocker. Like I was so specific. I would have vision boards all over my wall and I was like, that's the thing I want, you know?
Hmm.
and it was pushing it away. It was like repelling it because I was
Yeah.
so kind of fixated on it. And then there's that, our fixed sign. I think if you have a lot of fixed signs and your
Hmm.
birth chart, it can be really hard to let go. And like
Right.
the best, advice that I can think of when it comes to manifestation is you have to let go and you have to embody the energy of your future person. Like pretend you already have that and feel that now, embody it now. Right.
Right.
But that can be very difficult. So,
I think there's some balance between that and saying like, I want to work at Disney and as a blah 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 and be making this much. I don't know. I think some people have different levels of abilities in terms of being able to manifest specifically. I personally probably lean towards like manifesting more, if that's a spectrum, maybe more on the less specific, like just
yeah,
being open to like what happens.
I think exactly that. It's a spectrum and people manifest differently. For some people, it's so literal and hyper specific. And for others, yeah, I've recently gotten to a place where it's more of like a gray area, like I know
Mm-hmm.
the feeling of
Mm-hmm.
what I want and what I desire, but I also focus more on just trusting. Like, oh, if I have had that wish or desire implanted on my heart, it's there for a reason. There's like a billion other dimensions out there. It's probably already manifested in another realm. So it's there for a reason. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
focusing more on the trusting that, oh, it's like working its way to Earth.
Yes,
Yeah.
I like that.
So, okay, we have got to talk about
Okay.
your Oracle deck, the Women of Myth Oracle deck. Can you tell us a little bit more about this deck and this project?
Yeah, so I had been working with Adams Media, which is it's an imprint of Simon and Schuster, on two different projects. The one card tarot journal, and then we also did an oracle card journal. They approached me, I believe it was like July, maybe it was June 2022.
Mhm.
And they had worked with these two podcasters. So this is the Woman of Myth book. I didn't write this
Mhm.
book. I didn't participate with this book. But I guess there's these two women who kind of go through different cultures. Their names are Jenny Williamson and Jen McMenemy. I think I'm saying that correctly. They looked through goddesses, like, and goddess myths, and then like kind of heroines, they called them. Like these are like real women that actually existed in like history, not just like kind of like from a mythological perspective. And then they also looked at what they kind of categorized the book into those three sections, goddesses, heroines, and monsters. So they looked at women who are kind of scary in cultures, and like, Medusa, or they have these kind of like a scary mythos behind them, and like almost like warning for children or warning for men, and like, the Baba Yaga is going to come and get you if you do certain things. And like where those kind of cultural fears come from, and like what they're trying to combat against, and how they use these women's kind of as like scapegoats even. So the publisher approached me, and I mean, it was like one of those, like, talk about like blessings. It's always been my dream to like create a tarot or oracle deck. So they asked me if I wanted to make a tarot deck out of this book. So I got the book. I like, absorbed it. And then, yeah, it was like, this book is not written in any kind of like oracle sense. But do you mind if I talk a little bit about my process?
Yes, I want to
Uh,
hear about your process. Like, where do you start when you're designing a deck?
so after I got to know, like, so, it was kind of just like mapping out, there was like 50 women in this book. And then, continuing with that same kind of, if you think about like a tarot deck has minor arcana and major arcana, and within the minor arcana there's swords, there's pentacles, there's cups, there's wands. This one was, let's just take the structure of goddesses, heroines, and monsters. So it's like kind of devising that system of keeping it that, like, what that looks like. It was like every day, almost like a one card tarot spread of the day, or a one card pull of the day. It was like I spent time with each one of these women, but it was like, okay, so today, like, I'll just pull a card because I have it in front of me. Like Arowella, what does she want to tell me? So it's like, as I like navigated through my day, or like, and at some points I had to take a family trip to Greece. So it's like, and that's almost like they came with me, and like that's the affected part. I know how that sounds, but truly, I felt like it was almost like I had this like side companion, and it's like, what is the story of this card? So if I were to pull her, and no matter what kind of question I'm asking, if I'm asking a health question, if I'm asking a relationship question, if I'm asking a finance, career, whatever it is that I'm pulling from, when I future state, when someone would be trying to pull from this deck to get some insight, what is it that this specific woman wants to say? So it was like getting to know her history, from the book perspective, which was like, just research and academic, like who is she, where is she from, what part of the world was she from, what time was she, like, is she still prevalent in the culture today? So there was getting to know her, but then it was like it was like communing with her. You know what I mean? So it's like, what is she trying to tell me? So it's like, what is her advice? Like, what does she wish? Like, if she were my best friend, and like, or she was my mother, or if she was my older sister, or if she was a teacher, what would she want to tell me? And like, how would she tell me to navigate this? So it's not necessarily, the deck isn't structured to be like, this person likes you or doesn't like you. It's more about like, what are you, what I really feel like is the focus from like these 50 women of myth is like, how can you empower yourself based on her personal history, kind of like, I've been through the ringer, or I've lived life, I've gone through these trials and tribulations, I've been, branded a certain way, I've been stereotyped a certain way, whatever her personal history was, or her personal symbolism. And then how can she empower you to navigate that by almost like addressing some of those own insecurities or fears or mental blocks or trauma patterns within your own psyche. So
Mm.
yeah, it was really cool. Like, honestly, I feel like just spending time with it, I feel like that's why I can like more confidently say like, I trust my vibes. I think we all go through periods of time where we kind of, I don't know, feel like from a spiritual perspective, like, are we just these like beings? You know what I mean? And like, we're a random chance of, I don't know, cosmology. And then I'm just a brain, I'm just some organs. And when those stop functioning, that's it. And I'm done. And it's like, yeah, my consciousness is over and that's it. But I think when there are certain events in your life, or there's certain moments, or there's certain like, when you're able to like commune, I think, or feel the presence of, again, ancestors, these 50 women of myth, the planets, the goddesses, like whomever, like Saturn. I just think it's like they're letting you know there's more to it than just the surface level. And but yeah, it was a very enriching experience working on this deck.
Oh my gosh, I bet. And I love that, you know, when I think of mythology, I think a lot of it is just so male dominated and,
Mm-hmm.
patriarchy, white supremacy, all the things. And like you think of Hercules, you think of Zeus,
Yep.
but to tell the stories and elevate the voices of these women's from all over the globe and really reclaim their power, and who in a lot of their stories have been like demonized, but you really
Mm-hmm.
bring to light what is so magical and powerful about them. And I think that that just really comes through and is so needed in this project.
And thank you for saying that. I think you can even see maybe even some of the illustrations of the monsters. They're depicted in almost like kind of scary, or like not too graphic, but like there's like, a little bit of a darkness to those depictions. But as I was working through it, I can't say that it's like they were my favorite to work on, but they were my favorite to get to know because, like you were saying, I think so many times, particularly in cultures, like we slut shame women, we're scared of women. There's so much like I think anytime you look through the history, there's often times where it's like, when what they say is like the victor gets to write history. And I think when you live in a male dominated patriarchal society, like they tend to erase women's roles because they weren't allowed to write about them. I think this is a little bit of a tangent, but I'll get back to like even when you look at, I was just reading about the history of the game Monopoly. Milton Bradley, is that who the maker of the game board is? of the board game is, but they credit a man on the cover notes with writing with creating the deck, but the truth is a woman. He stole it from a woman. And so it's like, and I think that's where, I don't want to go too far on the tangent, but you'll see things like, well, men built the world, and it's just like, but no, they didn't, and it's just like they said that they did, but it's like these stories kind of prove that they're not the only ones in these stories, like the story of Mulan, or yeah, exactly. Like it's like when you look at like even astrology, it's just like poor lonely little Venus, and then it's like all the other planets are ruled by mostly gendered male planets. So it's just like I think there's like this erasure of women's roles and the parts that they played, like even going back to like oh, men built the world. It's like not only did women build the world, but it was also often enslaved people, but like we don't talk about that, so it's just
Mm-hmm.
like because that's not the history that we want to tell. And I think that's why, like again, this book I think is so important, because I think it just highlights that how much lack of awareness and education there is, like when we think about like going to school and like going to history classes and stuff like that, where it's like it mostly is from a male, particularly a white male perspective. So
Mm-hmm.
just being able to talk about women from different cultures, different time periods, it was really just like very eye-opening, and it was like an education process for me as well.
Well, your thoughtfulness and your process of communing with each of these women really, really comes through, because anytime I pull from this deck, I feel like a gut punch. Like I'm like, oh shit. It's like it literally shows you everything you don't want to hear, everything that you've been
Mm-hmm.
avoiding, everything that you've been telling yourself, like, no, it can't be that. That's not right.
Yes, yes.
And it's just such a powerful deck. So it
Well,
really, really packs a punch.
thank you for saying that. I mean, they drag me to filth too. I mean,
Yeah.
when I use this deck, I'm just like, oh, okay, I got it. Because it's not necessarily that I wrote this in like a fugue state. Like I remember the process of it, but it's like, yeah, I still use it for myself as well. And then I'll pull a card, and it's just like, but yeah, it's definitely, that was the process of like, when as I was getting to know each one of these 50 women, it's just like it felt like, sometimes it felt like mom energy, or proto, like the stereotypical mom energy. Sometimes it felt like older sister, sometimes it felt like wise mentor. But yeah, so it's like it just depends, but it's like they just let what I mean,
Mhm.
like they just, and they do it in their own voice. But yeah, it's just like there's not a scolding tone. Some of them are more scolding than others, but yeah,
Mm.
it's a little bit like, come on, get honest with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is going to be a very difficult question, but
Okay.
do you have a favorite women of myth from the deck, like a favorite card?
Yes, and actually, that's an easy question.
Okay.
So my favorite, and I was so like, I mean, I would have said yes to this project probably anyway, but when I was like going through it and just kind of, they were like sent it to me and they said, take a look, see if this feels like it's aligned, and this is something you want to work on. And when I opened it, the one that they had in the goddess section, or when I saw in the goddess section that they had Oya, I was just like, oh, okay, I have, and like it was almost, I felt like a sign, like I was like, I
Mm.
have to work on this. So I have always felt very aligned. So I have a friend who is Dominican, and so she's introduced me to Oya and Oshun, and like I have like awareness of, I won't go too deep into like, because I feel like it's just like a very personal relationship, but I've always just gravitated towards Oya. And so she's definitely my favorite. And I feel like she was like the influence for like the X-Men Storm character. So it's just like she
Mm.
controls like the winds and she controls hurricanes. And like when she makes an appearance in your life, it's really about like sweeping things away and like being willing. It's almost like an eclipse energy. And it's just like
Mm.
almost like you just got to let it go. It's going to be okay. Like, just, we're going to get rid of it. We're going to clean it out, and then we can start fresh. And, it's, yeah. So it's like, I just feel like, when I, if I pull, oh yeah, I'm like, I feel like it's like a wink for me anyway. I know
Mm.
like some people, like, she can be considered a little bit intimidating, but I think as you build your relationship with any one of the 50 women, particularly if you find them intimidating, or she's a goddess, she's not one of the monsters, but I think anytime you feel that sense of like, ooh, like she's hitting at something, or there's something that feels scary, I think it's about also being able to like not only just confront a shadow quality of yourself, but I think it's like about like it's not it's about like sympathizing with it and understanding it, and like it's part of me. And it's like I was saying earlier, like I have Scorpio placements. I can be like, I don't know, I can like sting, you know, like if I get really mad, like my it doesn't come out often, but when it does, it's like, you know, like I'm not always proud of it. And I think those characters, particularly, oh yeah, it's like she's fearless. She can be a little bit ruthless sometimes in terms of like cutting things away or clearing things out. But it's, oh, you know, it's about understanding that like you are a multifaceted person. You know, there are
Mm-hmm.
parts of you that are kind and caring and compassionate, and then there are times when you're not your best, and it's just you're human. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So yeah, sorry that like, but yes, that was an easy question. She's my favorite.
Yeah. And I think any goddess is going to be intimidating. Let's be real,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
totally. Can you do a poll for our
Yes.
listeners and give them a message?
Sure. All right, I'm going to do a little bit of a shuffle. Do we want to do it just about like maybe eclipse season, or do we want to make this like more evergreen, like
Let's
just in terms?
let's do more evergreen.
What do Stephanie's readers? What energy do they need to like embody right now, or what do they need to think about? Oh my God,
What?
it's a yeah.
Oh my
Oh my
gosh.
God. Oh my God. Oh my God. I have chills actually. I'm sorry. Like,
Oh my God. Oh my God. That's
can I
nuts.
can I tell you, I was literally, I wish I had, this is my psychic vibe. So I feel a little bit funny because I was going to say, like, wouldn't it be funny if we pulled a yeah? Because I was just like, you know, sitting here talking about her. Oh my God. I just feel,
Side note before you dive in, this is what I mean when I say Maria is a mystical bitch. But please continue.
yeah, I swear to God, I mean, it doesn't matter that I didn't say it because the point is we pulled her. Wow. So yeah, I think, you know what it says to me? It says, so she's very special to me. I have prayed to her. I've spoken to her. I do a weekly ritual for her. You know, I'm sharing a little bit more about my practice, in terms of what I do. You know, I have felt like she has saved me. You know what I mean? Like spiritually, emotionally, like I know, like I am sharing a lot now, but like I've cried to her. You know what I mean? I've asked her for things. Whatever it is, and like I said, like she can be. I think when you read about her, she can seem a little bit like a stern mother at first, but there is like a softness to her. And for me, it has been about learning to like I was just saying, like it's like just because like maybe I can, if we're tired or we're annoyed by something, or you know we have these moments where it's like we're not acting in a way that we're totally proud of, or if someone like posted like or wrote a headline about, you know, Maria snapped at this person or whatever, I wouldn't be like necessarily proud of it. But it's like the idea is, and I think what Oya helps us kind of like synthesize is like the multifaceted nature of ourselves. So it's about being a little bit less hard on yourself, which is something I still struggle with. You know, you and I were just talking about this the other week. Like, you know, this idea of like it's okay to like it's okay to be you. It's okay to be human. It's okay to like, and just because you have a bad moment doesn't make you a bad person. Or, you know, that part of the human experience is just feeling it all, you know? And I would say that that's the message. There's something that for her to come up for the poll for your reader or listeners means to me that like she wants me to share that. Like, yeah, because I tend to keep her more private,
Mm-hmm.
you know, my relationship, and I'm still being a little bit private about it, but wow, I really do have like, I think you can hear it in my voice. Like I'm not shaken, but I'm like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
I really can't believe that was the card we pulled. So
And
yeah,
one of
I would say, and then don't be afraid of letting things go. Especially,
mm,
I know we talked about it, we're fixed signs. So sometimes you just gotta clean slate.
mm-hmm. And what is her mythology and her backstory? Like, where does she come from?
So she's a West African Yoruba goddess.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's like a long, and it's in this book as well. She is like the goddess of like the winds and as part of that idea of like, you know, sweeping transformation, it's like, she cuts things out, it's like she like blows things away, and it's just she has this like whole backstory too with like her like going into war and being like a warrior goddess, and like being just as strong as the men. And then but she also has kind of like this kind of sad and maybe a little bit more tragic love story of like that feeling of like unrequited love. It's a really great story. I would like
Mm.
honestly like I would either, I mean, you can Google her, but it's in this book as well. But yeah, that's her background. So
Mm. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much for that poll
yeah.
and for diving into your process and just sharing so much of your magic with us. Before we go, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners?
I guess what I would want people to know is to not feel like spirituality or these like divination or divinatory tools or spiritual healing modalities are something that can be gate kept. Like
Mm.
you can just do it. Like if you have an inclination or a feeling that you want to jump into this world, just do it. Like you don't, and I think there's this balance between like, sure, you don't want to like be a total beginner newbie like day one and then suddenly you're charging people hundreds of dollars for a reading, like, but I don't necessarily think that there's as many rules. I think it's about being respectful of any time you're communing or connecting with but at the end of the day it's also about, yes, you're being respectful to them, but you also need to show yourself some self-respect because it's like they're part of you, you know what I mean, like that's where this communication is happening. So I would just say like just maintain that. But it's like if I say something or you see something on like TikTok or Instagram and it doesn't feel aligned or it feels scary or it feels like this isn't for me, then it's just like, but that just means like that is not for you. It shouldn't preclude you if you're interested from like picking up an oracle deck, or nothing bad is going to happen to you. You know what I mean? Like you're I don't know. So it's like that it's, I guess, like what I would say, if there's any fear or trepidation around starting or giving readings or exploring, like you should just let that go.
Mhm. Mhm. I think that's so important because that was something that I struggled with for so many years, and you helped me with that.
Well, thank you.
Where can we find you in your work and how can we support you?
Oh, you can find my work. Like I said earlier, I write horoscopes for it's a UK women's magazine. It's called Women in Home. But I usually post about that or send links to that. So I guess the easiest and best place to find me is on Instagram currently. It's Maria Sofia underscore astro, and that's on Instagram. I have a website, mariasophiaastrology.com. And then how can you best support me? I don't know. Just
Get the deck.
yeah, you could buy the deck. You can find that at Amazon, at Barnes and Noble. I think there's some like like indie. There's like other outlets. Books a Million, I think, has a wherever you feel comfortable. I've seen it also. Like I like was on vacation and like I walked into like a little like tarot shop and it was there and I was so excited about that and I got to like I became friends with the owner and like we were just chatting away. But yeah, you could find it sometimes in like those kinds of specialty shops. But yeah, that's how you could best support my work, I guess, is by, yeah, if you wanted to purchase a deck. Yeah, or shoot me a note if I said so, like if there's anything you want clarification on. I'm happy to talk.
Well, thank you so, so much for your time and your gifts and sharing your magic. And it was just such an honor to have you.
Well, thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun. And I know I talked a lot, so I appreciate the outlet to be able to do that.
We love a Mercury and Virgo queen.